Welcome back to the DTF Film Sessions. This is episode number 10. I'm Max Dean. You can find me on Twitter at @TheMaxDean. I'm here with Nick Merriam, our director of draft content and scouting at Defiant Takes Football. Find him at Nick with Sports on Twitter. And we're going to talk about Josh Downs, the wide receiver for North Carolina, one of the top options for Drake May, if I'm correct. You guys got to understand, I watch no college football during the season. So like every time I say something, I'm like, I hope that's right. But Nick, how you doing, man?
Good. Excited for this one because we get to kind of talk about the positional, I don't say it is value of just slot receivers in general, because this is a guy that's probably playing slot mostly. But there's a little more to his game that's interesting. And we're seeing these players, I think, impact the league a little more than they still are perceived to be impactful.
Yeah, certainly. And we've talked about Jackson Smith and Jigba at length. That should be live well before you see this. That was episode 7. So we talk about how valuable a slot player can be in the NFL. I'm still trying to get over the sinus infection here. But he's a smaller guy, right? We're looking at a guy whose listed measurables are 5'10", 175, or are these officially updated combine measurables now? Because
not yet.
We're probably slightly behind what the combine's putting out with some of these recordings. But if that's the case, he's probably even slightly smaller.
I kind of think that North Carolina does their measurements right, just based off history and the fact that they list like the eighth or the quarter of an inch too. So I think that they're probably more trustworthy with this than most teams.
Okay. Less rounding up then. Mm-hmm. All right. So any major overviews to Downs' game that you want to bring up before we dive into the tape today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he is a guy that we're going to talk about how many different ways you can use him. He's got like a unique skill set in that he is going to be more than just a guy who lines up in the slot and wins on routes for you. He's going to have specific areas of the field where he's going to be used. Maybe not as much as a blocker type, but he is effectively going to be thought of as teams as just a straight up slot player. And that's going to move him lower down the board. And I think that's interesting because we've seen in previous seasons now, 2 drafts in a row, we've had 2 like literally same exact size players, Elijah Moore and Jahan Dotson, who were kind of throughout the process thought of as like slot only players. And in Moore's case, we kind of saw his overall projection amongst consensus to be like a first round or like a late first round pick by the time the draft came around. And he ends up being like an early second. And he's been a good player for the Jets, even if they had some like issues at times last year. And then Dotson, year 1, was like extremely productive. He's a guy who did play outside at Penn State, but was just body type wise kind of like thought of as a slot only player at the NFL level. And a lot of the consensus for him was for about throughout the entire process, like also late first, early second type player. I think at the very end of the process, a lot of people sunk him down the board just because a lot of the physical traits guys in like the last couple of weeks get pushed up. That always happens. And then he ends up going 16th. And I think that's legitimately because the league had a consensus of this guy as like one of the 5 receivers who was going to go in the first round. So it's hard to really gauge where this position is in the league right now, because there are teams who are willing to spend high draft capital on it, because we've seen players like Cooper Kupp and even Justin Jefferson this year, the way he was used, and Odell at times when he was with the Giants, like really, really impact an offense as a wide receiver 1 out of the slot. But there's kind of this idea that because of the size measurables, that they aren't the physical talents that would normally go that high in the draft.
All right, so let's take a look and see. I mean, I think one of the key things that you need if you are a smaller player and you are a primarily slot guy, if you're going to make that kind of impact, you need to be pretty explosive. So let's see if that jumps out at us today, and let's take a look.
Yeah, so I think the explosiveness is certainly there for him. And just to start out, when we talk about slot players, I like to think of them as a safer option than your outside guys. Generally, these are middle of the field throws that you're taking advantage of zone coverage, and you're trying to kind of layer the ball in a way that, a guy's got to help his quarterback out a little bit more to make these catches. We're going to see this right here from him. The priority on this play from Downs is very simple. He's just going to try and help his quarterback out, Drake May. We're going to get what I believe is a 2 high shell maybe cover 6. I don't know if it's cover 4. It's open field underneath, though, because of the hashes and the way the field is presented. There's no need to rush this in his case. He very slowly settles into the zone, slight sidestep to space, kind of, plays off the leverage of that linebacker that's close to him, moves with him as that gap between the two linebackers closes, just gives himself that slight edge for the ball to kind of hang in between the linebackers. And then, normally you would go for a hands catch. But in this situation, it's unlikely there's anyone coming from behind to hit him because of the tendencies of these coverages. There's not likely to be a cover 2 safety coming up and hitting you. So he can just kind of cradle that ball and get an easy 10 yards. And this is just we talk about the smarts out of the slot. Like, you have to kind of play more like a veteran to make it at this position in the NFL out of college. This is a play to me that shows a guy that understands the priorities of this play and what needs to be done in order to complete the pass.
Yeah, it's I will say that sometimes little things from other players pop when you're watching a specific guy. This is the most casual throw into a window like this that you'll see out of a college player. And it's probably one of the things that has people so high on Drake May. But there is not a lot of space there, and that's just such an easy completion. But getting to downs, so I think when you're talking about the intelligence and the understanding of what needs to be done, right here, there's a gap between he and the ref and these two, the linebackers, right? And he has to cross that window at an exact speed that doesn't get him too far and into the other coverage zone before that ball can get to him. So he perfectly understands how quickly he needs to move to cross that gap.
And it's simply holding the space on that linebacker he's moving with. You just have to kind of overlap him slightly so that ball can layer in. As long as you stay with him, giving yourself space to catch that ball, you're not going to run into anything else because you trust the quarterback to kind of put that ball in a place where you catch it. And if he doesn't, well, that's on the quarterback. The receiver's done his job, as we see here. Right,
and he is taking advantage of some of the space too that's behind him with the two high safeties. Now, it's off of just one play. It's hard to say if that's just a natural tendency of his or if he just is aware that they're that deep off of him. But it's effective, at least on this particular play.
Well, I think generally, I had to look at the beginning of the snap again, but if you can tell off snap the way the corners are moving, you can generally tell like where the space is going to be from the safeties. And I think because the corner kind of doesn't quite sink at the bottom of the screen, generally the idea will be that the safety on that half is going to be sinking and you have some space to work with. I think he drifts a little bit off the linebacker because he's also trying to hold that linebacker a little bit with the idea that he might be moving, you may be going vertical, which, I think freezes that linebacker just a bit so that he can get inside of him on this crossing route.
Right. So that's right here also.
Just a little bit, like he could turn right around that linebacker and it would make this more efficient. But I think he kind of both uses his hand to let him know he's there, but also waits a little bit to fully commit horizontally. Obviously he's curling around, but sometimes there are routes that tell you to just kind of drift into that space between the safeties. And in this case, not that.
The backwards drift kind of starts right here. So he gets about, another 2 yards before the ball is fully in his hands. Anyway, this is real minutia, but ultimately it does benefit him on this play. All right. Let's see what we've got next here.
All right. Again, the intelligence to kind of open things up for your offense out of the slot is relevant to the extent that, you're not usually the primary option, and you kind of serve a role that allows other players to make plays. So this is kind of a spacing concept where they're going to ask the outside receiver to drift into a wheel route. And the idea with spacing is you have a 3-on-3 here. All of these receivers are just trying to bring bodies with them because if one of them can commit 2 bodies, that's going to open somebody else up, right? And in this case, he does a really good job of delaying any route stem here to kind of hold two defenders. And you got to remember, like, he is the best receiver on this team. Notre Dame knows that. They're going to be afraid of how he can hurt them in different ways. And kind of, showing his footwork, kind of giving them some eye candy here. Holds as a safety and the linebacker or slot corner here who might be involved with this play, allowing this kind of crossing route. It is a good play design to allow the crosser to kind of, go undetected across the field. But the patience here and the kind of the sacrifice to just understand that he can hold these players by just not committing to any route type early in this play allows this play to be made.
Right. So the number 5 here, the outside corner, he's going to end up taking on the number 2 receiver who becomes the number 1 threat as he releases outside, and the far outside receiver, split end there, he is going to be the crosser. And then Downs is going to basically absorb both this number 8, I guess that's a safety or possibly a linebacker, I'm honestly not sure, and the interior linebacker, both of which were watching him. And he also very intentionally stares him down, gives him a couple of steps, even though at this point his job is really done.
We talked about in the highlight video how a receiver can kind of freeze a defensive player by attacking their midsection opposite of their body motion. So you have this linebacker slot corner player sliding outwards, and he's attacking his center of gravity. And in this case, he's not using that to set anything up. He's just trying to get him to stop his feet, because as long as he's there, this drag route is open.
Right. And even though it's not this player's responsibility to take on that drag route, at least not at this point, he's also still distracted by Downs as well, which ultimately gives the crosser who catches the ball more time before this safety crashes down on him. All right.
Okay. So let's talk about versatility. This is the more gadgety guy that we're going to have in this draft class. Versatility to put him in the backfield. He's not maybe going to be a lead blocker type, but they like to run him on motions, kind of give him the ball a handoff sometimes. And sometimes you just get a 2x2 look and you throw a bubble screen here. This is how they scheme him up, getting him the ball. CB that's in the box because you've moved him into the backfield. This is something we see a lot in the NFL. And the thing that I like about this is simply, he looks like a fullback in rugby or just a running back in general. Like, he has a hole and he's hitting it hard because the design of this play is we've got a 2-on-2 blocking scheme. We've got 2-on-2 blocking look. And there's a gap there, and we just need you to hit it and get as many yards as you can. Don't do anything extra. This is a guy that can make guys miss in space. Like, that is very much a part of his game. But he knows that the design of this play is I'm catching the ball with acceleration, and the fact that I'm hitting this hole at speed is what's going to pick up 6-7 yards. I don't need to do anything more. It's simple. It's easy, and he makes these plays easy because of the kind of safe options he chooses.
Yeah. I mean, just a good angle, very effective. I mean, the timing of that is clearly very good. Even though the tackle and the end are kind of like right in the throwing lane, there's clearly a connection between receiver and quarterback.
Well, I think
downside.
The other thing is, go ahead, actually, you say first because I'll follow up.
I was just going to say the downside here is, a lot of other receivers are probably breaking that tackle. That's not what you'd call elite contact balance right there, but
yeah, I mean, he might get caught either way. I think a lot of receivers would try to bounce this all the way outside the 2 blockers as well, and I think you would not gain extra yardage by doing that.
Yeah, I agree. It's a wise decision to split them.
The idea here is he just follows his blockers and takes the yardage that he's given, right? Which is not really a football concept. The way that a lot of these plays are designed, the way at least players play it a lot is they try to score touchdowns in every play. I hate to always bring up rugby in this, but that's a sport where the idea is you want to get 5 meters every time you touch the ball. And that has to do a lot with catching the ball with acceleration because, whoever's tackling you is going to tackle you, but you're going to be driving them backwards in a way that you gradually gain ground. In this case, he sets himself up for a situation where even if he gets tackled, he's going to get an extra 3 yards just because of how quickly he hits this hole and how quick he makes the decision, how quickly he makes that commitment.
Yeah. It's also not the greatest block from his receiver there, but what you're going to do. All right.
All right, we're going to look at some red zone plays from him because they loved using him and scheming up stuff for him to get open in the red zone. And it was not physicality. It was simply quick off release, his shiftiness, his footwork. And this is really where he thrives as a player. So we're going to see 2 different red zone tray formations here, just 3-by-1 formations. We're going to get double slant with a fade from him. This is a huge Antonio Brown route. This is something he used a lot in Pittsburgh. It's a delayed fade route. And you basically just kind of use the picks or the natural picks from those slants, give a little bit of a hesitation inwards. And as a smaller guy, like, you don't have to win a jump ball with a corner all over you because you have the foot speed to kind of get him behind you on this route. And then if the quarterback can lead you to that corner and you have the ability to go up and get it with some space, you can. And he has shown often that in his hands and body control combination are very good. I think if you hit him while he's in the air, he's not necessarily as likely to come down with the ball. But North Carolina, knowing the type of receiver he is, they can get him open in these quick spaces because of how how quick he is to make decisions on these routes. And just his feet here are there's no like thinking here. It's just, wait for that pick, break off it immediately, and then without hesitation, kind of give the little quick feet move and hip move to put that corner behind him.
Yeah, well, there's a clear plan. And again, I like to see clear plans. So with him, this is set up to create a pick, right? And he knows that. So what he's doing is he is getting as close as possible to his receiver. He's trying to get lost behind them. And if that works, then he can just take his fade smoothly. But the defender does a nice job of avoiding that trash and flows with him to that gap. But he is ready for that. And so the secondary part of what he does is he throws that little fake and just completely jukes him. And that's a really nice move. I mean, that's quick feet and explosion out of the break and body control to get back on trajectory quickly. So that's a nice job.
Yeah, he has some of the most visually good looking routes you'll see in this draft class, in my opinion, just because of how smooth this is from the release to getting around the pick to the move. And then even just catching the ball, he looks very fluid. It's not, there's no wasted motions here.
Yeah, I wish this end zone copy was a little better because you don't really see the catch very well. But
it's better than the Jordan Addison clips, I'll tell you that. There are some teams that don't do as good with this all 22 filming.
And he is catching that through contact as well.
Yeah.
So, you're not taking a shot per se, but
yeah. I think if he's not a guy who's going to kind of do your Jamar Chase, DeAndre Hopkins, jump at the same time and pluck the ball over another defender, but if you give him some space, he'll make those catches. All right, so we are going to get an opposite tray look here. Again, red zone, 3-by-1. He's the inside receiver, and we've got another pick play kind of designed for him here that takes advantage of his footwork. It's a whip route. I would call this a grapple route. I don't know why I learned that term. I might have been in high school. I don't know, but that's something that I've been calling it until I learned the term whip. It's a little bit of a pick, which certainly helps him get open, but he also does a good job here to pull this corner into the pick, right? With his feet, holds some kind of inside stem, steps inward a little bit as if it'd be a slant. He has open space to run to, which kind of worries that corner because he's already got the leverage. And then the quickness to kind of flip his hips and get around here. There's a lot of separation on this route. It's not like he just beats this guy by a little bit, and I know the pick helps, but I would argue even without it, he is breaking away from this guy. And it's, again, the idea of a slot receiver is a guy who has the ability to kind of have the hip fluidity and feet to just beat you in this kind of 5-by-5 yard space and allow themselves to gain extra yards after the catch because of how open they get. And I think his separation skills are clear in the red zone where, you don't get a lot of space to make these movements, right? And he clearly does his job here to pull this corner into a spot where that pick can eliminate him from the play.
Yeah, and I agree with you that this is probably a wide open route regardless of the pick. But this move that he throws in the beginning here, he is drifting slightly to the right so that he's pulling the receiver or the corner into the pick or the DB into the pick. But also he's giving that pick time to develop as well.
Yep.
And then once it's in place, then he really commits to the inside and drops his hand. I mean, amazing. And I don't think that's accidental at all. Like that.
Yeah.
That's like 3-cone drill right there. Like he's just
exactly. This is great balance and hip fluidity there. But I think something that was a knock against Kadarius Toney. I remember the discussions about his route running, being that he was not timing based route runner. He had the ability to cut in and out. But if you asked him to kind of time up his routes with stuff like this, he was not as good at this type of thing. Josh Downs very clearly has the ability to, or has prepared at least the kind of the step-by-step process of these routes so that he knows how many steps he needs to take for this route to succeed. And he knows like 1, 2, 3 out and back, so that he will be not only drawing that player into the pick, but also cutting right off the pick so that he is, again, like on the last play, like effectively coming off the hip of that North Carolina receiver that's blocking.
Also, very casual extension for the ball. Like that's an underrated thing. You see these guys who are eventually going to be paid millions of dollars to catch a ball, and you would expect this kind of thing, but you want to see a guy.
Too.
What's that?
Does he keep his feet here too? I don't remember. Because it's impressive if he does. Because obviously he's going from like a 45-degree angle, and there's a better player there. So I don't know how he's going to test. That's coming up this week, and this video might come out after that. But I would expect that even if he doesn't run like in the 4.3s, that his 3-cone, his 5-10-5, some of his explosion drills, he's going to be impressive for a smaller guy. Because I think a lot of these smaller guys kind of struggle to really put up large numbers in his drills because, quite frankly, they don't have the longest legs. They have less of a frame to fill out. And in this case, we've seen just how he can at full speed adjust and make impressive body control movements at full speed. All right, last thing. He's got a little deep ball skills to him, and he can beat you with speed. He's not gonna. I don't know if he's gonna run any better than like high 4.3s, like a 4.38. But he might have that, and you'll see, like, when they get good matchups, he'll beat a guy deep in college. And, this isn't maybe the best setting up the deep ball type route, but he definitely does kind of give an inside stem before breaking out to the corner. Great ball by QB1 Sam Howell. Nice touch ball down the field. But also we talked about body control and tracking. He shows that off here as well. He lays out for this ball and kind of hauls it in. He's going to have the ability to stretch the field as well in an offense. And all these things we've talked about, like gadget ability, red zone, quick cutting, being kind of a safety valve and running deep. He's a guy that, I have a slot grade. I put him in as a slot receiver on our receiver ranking video. But he has a real wide array of things he could do for an NFL offense. And I wouldn't be against taking this guy probably higher than a normal starting slot because, we're talking about a guy like Jalen Hyatt who, his one thing is ability to stretch the field from slot or outside. And whether Downs is just going to play in the slot or, you actually think he can move around, there's a lot more to his game than just the ability to beat you deep. And I think when you can get open underneath the way he does, it gives you more opportunities to win on routes like this. Whereas in this case, he is going against a too high, effectively what is a too high safety. The safeties kind of come down to play cover 4. Pittsburgh runs a lot of cover 4, just in man-to-man in this case. But he's got effectively off coverage, and he's still able to kind of beat him deep. He really kind of slows this route at the beginning. He does not give him a whole lot of speed and explodes off of this footwork inside to kind of give you that change of pace that can throw off the defensive back.
Mm-hmm. And you see him, so he's directly to the left of where the field changes color by the hashes, right? So he's directly to the left. Then right here, he starts to drift right, left. It takes a larger step left, and then uses that to sell the inside move, right? Because if you open, like just selling the inside move to a corner means that there is a chance that even if they slightly react, they're still going to be able to flip their hips and run with you. If you can force them to subtly open themselves up to you before you throw your move, they're off balance. And then when you come back, it's hard to switch like as a reaction. It's way easier to do that as the aggressor.
Yeah, I love the footwork here. So we're not going to get like a 1-2 and flip the hips. We're going to get kind of like a jump cut transition here where he doesn't ever really move inwards. He kind of gives this because it's all hip angles. Like you can juke a guy. I know I've tried it. You can juke a guy by just showing your hips one direction and then running the opposite. Because like we talked about in the last video, defenders are taught to watch your midsection, right? They're looking for which way your midsection is moving. So when he turns these hips, the corner is or the safety here in this case. I don't know if it's Eric Howell or not, who's a guy I scouted for SIS, but he's clearly got his feet stopped because he's worried about him coming inside, even though Downs really never tracks inward, because what he actually does here is he starts running horizontally and then accelerates to the corner.
Well, he's very upright. He's very upright when he starts to drift slightly outside. And when he takes that inside step, all he does is just throw his leg out. His actual torso and like center of gravity doesn't change where it is horizontally on the field, but he throws that leg out, drops the hips real low, and then just comes screaming out of that break at full speed. And the other thing is that he is turning to track that ball here. So his head's basically fully turned here. And he's going to go 5, 10, almost, like 18 yards with his head fully turned tracking the ball. It's hard to run that long with your head turned around and maintain balance. And then on top of that, you throw in the timing and the body control to go fully horizontal, completely parallel to the ground, not like falling to your knees. Like that's a tough play to make, and he's going down pretty hard.
It's touchdown in the NFL too. He's going to get in the end zone if that happens in the NFL. I want to see him with a touch passer who can throw it deep, because I think he has the skill set to make these catches consistently, similar to kind of those receivers that Howell's working with in Washington, Dodson and McLaurin. If you throw that ball up on the touch, they can kind of lay out and grab it. He's going to have that ability out of the slot. So I think of teams like, earlier in the first round, earlier in the second round, I guess, because he's going to be going there. But obviously, like, any team, any player would be happy to land in Kansas City. But Philadelphia is a team that really likes to attack the deep throw with those type of throws. Like that would be a great spot for him. At the beginning of the second, I think Kyler Murray, if he ever gets healthy, like he's a guy who fits in that system well. I don't know that they're looking for another receiver considering where they're going to be, but let's say Indianapolis gets CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. That's another team that needs a slot type. Both those guys have the touch throw ability that I think he would match up very well. You just need a guy who can read underneath and then give you a chance to go win deep, and he has shown that ability consistently.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I like him a lot. I think there are limitations, and you do have to recognize that, but that doesn't mean that he can't be very, very impactful at the next level. I think his top speed is going to depend on a lot. I think guys like Elijah Moore, for him, running sub 4.4 was a big deal for him. And I think for Dotson, his catch radius, and he's a little bit sturdier, I think, probably has a few extra pounds compared to a guy like Moore
I think he's
or
like
Downs.
180. Yeah. I mean, so I actually think Dotson's like a really good comp for him. I think the difference is Dotson's body control and catch radius are even better, even though I think Downs is good. And I think the release package that Dotson showed on the outside was more translatable to playing, the Z position as he is in Washington. Whereas Downs, I don't know that we've seen that as much from him. But based on the routes we've seen from him in the red zone with that footwork, like I think it's very possible that he could be that player, right? We haven't necessarily seen that consistently yet.
Yeah. It's going to depend on the vision for him from whichever team drafts him, which will probably dictate how highly he will go. All right. So, Nick, what do you think you want to do next? I think this is the last receiver we're doing for a minute because we want to do Zay Flowers, but we're holding off because we need a little bit more tape on him. So that's going to come up. But who do you want to do next?
Let's do Brian Bresee because, well, I have defensive tackles and some edge players cut up. I started with a defensive, so we could actually go edge next if we wanted to. It would either be Bresee or Will Anderson.
All right. Let's do Anderson since he's one of the consensus top guys, and then we can bounce around the defensive line after that. All right. I am Max Dean. You can find me at the Max Dean. Nick Merriam at Nick with Sports. You can find all of our written content at defianttakesfootball.com, at Defiant Takes on social media outlets. And we are live every Monday and Thursday for the Defiant Takes Football show, which is both live streamed and available on podcast feed. So appreciate you. Let us know what players you want us to do in terms of defensive linemen. We'll try and get to those first. Throw us a like. We appreciate that. Helps out everybody here. And we will see you all very soon.